Hello everyone, I'm Caris Lambert, the Digital Content Manager here at MorePay. Welcome to this unique webinar today we've made for professionals like you working in and around payroll in our Payroll Careers series, which is designed to help you excel in your role. So our webinar today is on embracing neurodiversity in your role and in your business, and the agenda today is an introduction on neurodiversity, including our speaker Cybill's story, the challenges of being neurodivergent at work, understanding the personal strengths that drive excellence, including how to thrive as a neurodivergent professional, and some Q&As if you are one, supporting neurodivergent colleagues and reports, and we finish off with a Q&A with Cybill, our speaker today. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We would really recommend you ask any questions you have in this webinar for our speaker at the end. If you do have one, you should see a little panel on your screen, so just pop your question in there and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can in the time we've got. Also, we're going to send everyone who's attended and registered a recording and the slides after this webinar is finished. So you don't need to take any notes or anything, and don't worry if you have to drop out a bit early, just enjoy the webinar and we'll send everything across at the end. And just a tiny bit about us for anyone who's new here. MorePay have been around for nearly 60 years now, and our mission is to make payroll and HR easy. For all of these reasons below is why our customers choose us, from our secure technology to our trusted team of experts and our industry awards, including the Payroll Service Provider of the Year award that we won with the CIPP just last month. And we make payroll and HR easy through our easy-to-use software, quality services, which means worry-free compliance for you. If you'd like to learn any more about us, I won't carry on now, but just let me know in the chat and one of our advisors can follow up with you. There'll also be an opportunity to put in your interest if you want to at the end of the webinar in a little pop-up survey. Yeah, and now to introduce our guest speaker. So Cybill Watkins is Group Product Legislation Manager at Zellis Group. And Zellis Group includes MorePay, that's us, and Zellis and Benefex, our sister companies. Cybill describes herself as a payroll geek. That's something that she said, it's not something I've made up, with an obsession for payroll and HR laws, which she uses to advise and educate on everything legislation, both within the team and externally as well. So essentially, she keeps us up to date with legislation in real time and informs our experts and our product as well. Cybill's also an advocate for neurodiversity in the payroll industry, which is our topic for today. And now I'll hand you over to Cybill to start us off on the webinar. Hi, Cybill.
Thanks, Caris. Yeah, I am a bit of a geek, so to get started, what is neurodiversity? So neurodiversity, some describe it a bit like a fingerprint. Every brain processes information in a different way, and there are many similarities to our brains, but no two are the same. And in that respect, everyone is neurodiverse. You'll hear people saying neurodivergent. Neurodivergent is the person, neurodiverse is the group. But being neurodivergent means that having a brain that works differently from a neurotypical person. It can describe the way people experience, see, and interact with the world around them, and in different ways. There are many different conditions. We've listed a few. We've got dyslexia, dyscalculia, autistic spectrum disorder, which includes the conditions such as one of them that I have, which is Asperger's, ADHD, dysgraphia, Tourette's, obsessive compulsive disorder, dysphonia, developmental language disorder, dyspraxia, and the list goes on and on. You don't just have to have one of those conditions. You can have multiple traits of multiple conditions, or you can have multiple diagnoses. From some reports in 2020, they approximated that 20% of the population is neurodivergent. But if you start looking at everything today, I wonder how much more that is, how many more people have been diagnosed or at least have strong traits towards the conditions. To get the best out of people, you need to treat them as the individuals that we are. Every person has strengths and every person has challenges. Some learn by reading, others learn to do the task by doing the same task repeatedly. Supporting neurodiverse colleagues is as simple as getting to know your team and treating everyone as an individual. So a bit about my story. I was diagnosed at 45 years old, ADHD combined and Asperger's. 4 years ago, I had limited knowledge of autism or ADHD, but once it was suggested, after spending hours researching it, the light bulb moment came and it was like, yeah, this explains so much of my life. My neurodivergent story is a life of struggles. It's a life of failures, masking, instability in jobs and life, and severe mental health issues. However, I'm really lucky. I finally got to being in a stable place with a successful, stable job, doing what I obsess over daily. And now it's allowing me to help others on their journey, whether it be just at the beginning, somewhere in between, or somebody that's living with somebody on their journey. I still live in fear, but I have also come to accept that this won't change. I'm still learning my triggers and my limitations, and although I still won't say no and will never stop and actually turn around and go no, I am slowly learning to say what is not quite as comfortable for me, what I'm not happy or confident to do. I also still suffer with burnout at work, and this is something again that also won't change. But with the right environment, I can now see that I should be able to go for a couple of years before it hits me. My CV is local business directory. I mean, how many people have had good experiences? But then you go and have a look how many jobs they've had. Have you ever actually sat back and asked why? Or you just presumed that they're not dedicated or they weren't wanted by those employers and just generally picked up on a negative view? I mean, I remember years ago, a business said to me that if a candidate had more than 2 or 3 jobs since leaving school, they wouldn't even finish reading the CV. There've been many reasons why I've left roles, but I can attribute 70 to 80% of the changes down to the ADHD or autism or the problems within the workplace that have been caused because of my conditions. It's still valid today, but I understand my conditions and traits, and now I'm able to help my manager and the business to support me. So fingers crossed, this will be my final career change. I've been in payroll for over 25 years now, and it's always something that I felt came easy to me. I love and need deadlines. The law's the law, and it fits in with so many of my traits. And I also enjoy being behind the scenes, the lack of social integration and not having to speak to strangers. While completing my qualifications, I had an amazing mentor who was my tutor and picked up on my ability to learn, understand and translate legislation. Proudly, rightly or wrongly, I'd highlight that any possible loopholes in the wording if it wasn't explicit or exact, or at least question it with arguments to support another angle. I stayed for many, many years in mainstream payroll, but it was only really the legislation aspect that kept me there. What you now see on the screen is a visual aid to my strengths and my struggles. It's also something that I found useful to put down when I was learning about myself and even today, and it is still growing and it still changes. You know, you've got fatigue, burn out easily. I'm loud and excitable at times. I struggle with change. I'm an absolute control freak. I lose concentration, and I'm lazy, and I get bored. I live in fear. I have no boundaries. So looking at the strengths, I'm loyal, hyper-focused. I put everyone else, including the business, before my own needs. I look at the world from a different view, or maybe multiple different views. I'm actually an advocate for change. And this is where the fight comes in. Can you say you don't like change, yet you want change? And this is the difference between the two conditions. And it is a daily fight. When I'm doing something like this, getting to talk to people, or say going to a conference, which I absolutely love and hate and dread at the same time, who knows which side of Cybill you're going to get. So for my conditions and my fights, I'm an all or nothing type of person. I'm impulsive, passionate, control freak, loyal. I'm strategic. I can follow the letter of the law. I see everything in black and white. It's not an interpretation. ADHD combined. I've got an inattentive part, which means I've got a shorter attention span than a goldfish, or I'm really easy distracted. But that conflicts with the Asperger's, which means I'm hyper-focused and find it hard to deviate from a subject. I lose things and appear and really am genuinely forgetful. I'm unable to stick to tedious tasks, constant tasks, and can't follow instructions. Yet I need instructions and everything needs to be black and white. The hyper-focus side of the ADHD means I'm constantly fidgeting. Thank goodness we haven't got the camera on. I talk excessively, great for these sort of things. But then that clashes with the social issues and the autism. I have an inability to wait my turn. I'm impulsive. And trust me, if you knew my recent impulse buyings, you would fully understand that. I'm unable to concentrate. I have to do more than one thing at once. I interrupt conversations and appear to act without thinking. But there's so many of the Asperger's traits which are opposite to ADHD, which mean I'm not only exhausted and struggling with burnout, but at the same time, I'm also searching for the next stimulation. My social issues include needing time alone, fear of groups and people, fear of strangers. Yet I want to be as part of many working group, conference, speaking opportunities as possible. My traits support my ability to read what's actually written, and I view life and what's right and what's wrong. This is why being in a career governed by legislation and driven by strict deadlines has been so appropriate for me. So why is payroll a good career for neurodivergent people? It's a stable industry. Whatever people say, AI will never totally take over. It's a long, stable career. Structured environments with regular, clear instructions. Well, we have the laws to follow, so it's black and white. There might be a lot of it, and there might be a lot of jargon, but you pull those bits out, and hey presto, there's your laws. And you don't get to turn around to HMRC and say, oh, you know, don't worry, I'll report it. I'll report RRTI next week. I'm just a bit busy at the moment, or I'm on holiday. Deadlines are deadlines, good or bad, but we know where we stand. We know what's got to be done. Attention for detail. That's another big quality, particularly when you're trying to find, you know, that one elusive 1 pence when you're balancing. You've got 5,000 lines. I mean, yes, okay, then you've got the ADHD of not wanting to concentrate, but we'll never give up. We'll find that darn penny. So, you know, the benefits, as I say, you've got stability and we've got strict deadlines. Qualifications can be done on the job rather than studying a textbook and studying theory. It's all practical. People are starting to celebrate our traits, starting to say, actually, you know what? Look at these guys. Look what they can bring. They can find those solutions. They can find the pennies. For me, being in software development, software may be different, but it's all the same principles. It's all the same rules, and we've all got to follow the same laws. And there is a massive, massive opportunity to diversify and specialize. You can stick with, you know, the single track of payroll, whether you're just staying, you know, administrator, you go on to team leader, onto a manager, onto a head of. But utilizing our brain skills, you can also diverse, as I've done, into software. You could go into HR, you could go into more of a tutorial type role. It doesn't be that straight line. But I wanted to flag out some of the struggles when working in payroll, because I've only found my struggles as I've looked back over time. I didn't see the struggles as I was there. When they were happening, I thought, oh, maybe it's just me, maybe something's not right, or maybe it's the business, hence the change of jobs. I think the ideal industry will bring out the best in us, in our strengths, and working towards our traits, although we do have these continuous challenges. Struggles include getting overwhelmed. I get very frustrated, particularly when other people don't follow the laws, and when you turn around and you hear the business say, well, we're not doing that. I love the challenge of trying to answer a question in layman's terms, but I do struggle with it, and especially struggle if I'm being questioned or somebody turns around and says I'm wrong, even though I've got the answer in black and white. I can tell you what legislation in, any changes that are made, the subsection, and then everything else. I'm actually really sensitive. The louder I get means that I'm hiding something. Don't like speaking to strangers. Again, yeah, I talk for England as well. Processes that have to be followed. There's no, this is my way of doing it, or this is the way we've always done it. Yes, I am hyperactive, but you know when something's not quite right, because I can then go really quiet. Burnout, it's going to happen. Going to need a little bit of time off. Going to need a bit of respite. Mental health, I've been at the very bottom of the bottom. And, you know, luckily in my life now, I've become more stable, and it's a good stable as well. And I think the last struggle that I had was managers not willing to adapt or understand my strengths and challenges because it's different to the status quo. I wanted to pull out some bias and some prejudice, because we've all got it. And I don't want this to turn into some sort of lecture. I want to open it as a question, just things for people to think of. Because at the end of the day, neurodivergent conditions aren't well understood. And as a result, many people may hold conscious or unconscious bias against somebody who is neurodivergent or showing traits that aren't best seen in a stereotypical workplace. I mean, it's really hard to put into words and to be politically correct to explain my feelings on this, so bear with me. There may have been certain expectations or ideas about behaviour, ability, work ethics, or personalities of neurodivergent people. They may even act in a prejudiced way towards that person, or two neurodivergent people towards each other, because they've both got different life experiences. Treating people left favourably obviously is not acceptable, but it does happen. But it could be from not considering the person for work opportunities, to exclude them from events, or to act in the worst way, being hostile or insulting towards them. It could even just be the way a job description is written. Needless to say, discrimination is against the law in the workplace. It should not be tolerated by an employer, but more importantly, it shouldn't be tolerated by colleagues, which are you, which are me, anybody who witnesses it. And we shouldn't be made to feel that it's wrong to shout out. I'm going to be really honest here on some of my perceptions before understanding the conditions. My first one was ADHD. It's only in young boys who are misbehaving. And anybody in the workplace would disrupt the status quo, particularly when you need quiet time to concentrate. Somebody say with dyscalculia, where it affects their ability with numbers, couldn't be an accountant. Why not? Why not just change the way that your business does things so that they can be? Part of a team, this is actually one I heard, you can't work as part of a team if you're wearing noise cancelling headphones, or if you've got headphones on because you need a certain type of noise in the background to get the best out of you. Autistic people won't fit in the team because they can't communicate well. Yep, heard that one as well. And the worst one, and I still see this today, particularly as I've been out in more and more businesses giving these sorts of talks. Why should we make adjustments? They're not disabled. They can still walk. They've still got arms. They've still got legs. It's sad, but it still happens. Although neurodiversity and particularly ADHD has been in the news lately, there's been a lot of misrepresentation. One major news outlet that we all pay for has likened the diagnosis of ADHD to a trendy condition. But then I heard that about fibromyalgia as well. It's so far from the truth. It's just finally we're getting some recognition and understanding of why we are the way we are. Over to masking, because masking is something that so many people do, and I've done all my life. And I still do in certain circumstances, but there's other times now that I refuse to. Because our social norms are different to others around us, we often experience greater pressure to hide our true selves and fit into that of a non-neurodivergent, so a neurotypical culture. More often than not, we have to spend our entire lives hiding our traits and trying to fit in, even though odds of appearing neurotypical are against us. Studies are now beginning to find how detrimental to our health masking can be. There was Bradley et al. And Hull et al. Back in 2019, saying autistic people who mask more show signs of anxiety and depression, and the strategy may have been linked to increased suicidal behaviour, by Casti et al. 2018. Masking can include forcing or faking eye contact during conversations, imitating smiles and other facial expressions, mimic gestures, hiding or minimising your personal interests, developing a repertoire of rehearsed responses to questions, scripted conversations, pushing through the intense sensory discomfort. So whether that be loud noises or somebody's being made to wear a uniform of, say, like a woolen jumper, yet they find that wool triggers the senses. Diving swimming behaviours, so hiding a jiggling foot or trading a preferred movement for one that's less obvious. Just not being yourself, that real you. For me, again, masking, I'm loud. But that's because I'm hiding that sensitive person that's really there. So it doesn't even have to be because you're neurodivergent. It's life. When we suppress certain behaviours, we find soothing but so socially deemed as weird, different or strange. The strategy of masking shows how clever and resourceful our minds are at finding ways of coping. At some point in our life, like during job interviews, we may even find it very useful. It shows how we can adapt to our surroundings, fit in, and be that stereotypical perfect team member. Many people who don't mask their true identities, the pressures we have to fit in, be like take all our time and our energies. For me, I also used alcohol to mask, and it wasn't until I cut out my drinking I realised I didn't know who I was. 4 years on, I'm still trying to find the true me, still trying to figure out who I really am. But not knowing who you really are can contribute to the mental health crisis. Have any of you heard the saying, how can you expect someone else to love you if you don't love yourself? And that to me is so true in life. The biggest thing we can do is educate ourselves about neurodivergent conditions to increase our understanding and acceptance of people and be there to support them. No one should have to change who they are to please another person or to fit in or to be that perfect team member. Employers need to learn more about all the different traits. Say for autism, training should be a part of every education program, but not just on autism, a little bit of everything. The more we know, the more we understand, the less stigma and the less pressure we will have to fit in. So recently I've been starting to have some people asking me some questions. So I thought I'd put them out here first. The first one I hear is, should I get a diagnosis? My answer is, it really is down to you as a person. Ask yourself, what will this achieve? Will it change anything? More importantly, can you cope with not hitting the invisible target needed for the NHS diagnosis? And by the way, it doesn't change your employment rights. Could you face being told, no, you don't have ADHD because you're just missing a couple of traits to hit that percentage line? Can you cope with waiting for another 5 years of not knowing now you're on that journey? I took that decision, and I knew that getting the diagnosis for me was imperative, and I was not going to take no for an answer. I did remind them that a few times. Every time they said, well, I was like, no, let me just tell you where you're wrong. I don't know whether that helped or not, but you know, I did get my diagnosis, and it just answered a lot of questions. So will medication help me? Most conditions I listed don't have any medication licensed, and those that do, it only works for some people. There really is no way to tell. Everybody is so different. Everybody will have different reactions. ADHD, there's two types of medication, stimulant and non-stimulant. I was like a Duracell bunny that had been sticked onto some super fast mode as soon as I was put onto the mildest stimulant. So they had to come off. But the other side, it did work. No, it hasn't stopped my crazy impulse buying. No, I haven't just gone and bought something for the horse that they really didn't need or done something crazy like that. But, you know, it does keep me a little bit more on track. My personal problem within that was the autism actually causes me more day-to-day issues, but this isn't a condition that can be medicated. I finally hit the end of the triation for the ADHD meds, but it's not an easy route. So again, if your condition has medication, you need to weigh up the pros and cons of trying it and be aware that they might not work. Should I tell my manager? I always say to everybody, you know, speak out, tell people, but again, only you can answer that. My personal opinion is absolutely, as how can they support you if they do not know? But I also speak to people regularly who don't feel or don't want to tell their manager for whatever reason, whether it's because they feel it's a very personal trait or very personal diagnosis, or they don't feel their manager would understand, or they feel that they'd be looked upon differently. So I'd say to that, confide in someone else, whether you use your HR team, a workplace mental health first aider, or many businesses now are setting up neurodiversity sort of groups. Reach out to business and see what help there is. You know, have you got a network or a mentor scheme that you could turn to for more help? But if the business doesn't have that, why don't you ask? Somebody's got to be the voice within your business to start it all off. I get help as I'm struggling at work or I'm struggling at home, struggling mentally. That's a really easy one because there's so many avenues. And just remember, you're not alone. You have your manager if you feel that you can, or colleagues, but you've got your EAP, you have HR, and there's numerous charities out there for mental health, for financial help, for employment support, diagnosis, and your GP. Never ever feel that you are alone. Never ever feel that nobody knows what you're going through or how you're feeling. They do. But please, please don't suffer alone. Please just ask. So I want to go on now onto some strengths. Let's pick this back up again. Like everyone, neurodivergent people are unique and bring their own skills. They bring the amazing experiences and expertise to roles. For a business to avoid hiring neurodivergent people accidentally or deliberately is to miss out on a massive pool of talent that could really, really help the team and really help the business flourish. But being neurodivergent, having minds that work differently to a neurotypical people means they can also bring a unique perspective and different thought process to the job. We are the sort of people that will find that solution where everybody else has looked at it and go, no, can't be fixed. Give it to us. We'll find a way. We're loyal, dedicated, focused. We can find that proverbial needle in a haystack. Multitask, adhere to deadlines. Some of us obsess as well. There are so many, and these ones I've listed are just things that obviously come from my conditions, because I only like to talk about my story. I don't like to talk about being that other person. I haven't lived their lives and their conditions. But always look at the strengths. Always support the person to turn their struggle into a strength. It won't ever fix it. It won't ever change it. But you can turn things around. How to get your workplace to work for you. So these are some of the things when I started going into just talking a bit about neurodiversity, which was something I only did a few months ago. Well, a little bit longer now, because I can't believe how long I've been here. But for me, it was to understand my traits, being open and honest with the business and my manager, learning how to work with my traits and not fight them, understand my strengths and challenges, routines, really important, and using a planner and calendar. And then I share them with my immediate team so that they know that I won't say no. If they see something's blocked out, they just won't even ask in the first place. Explain how to approach change with me. I mean, nearly always 100% up for change, but do not blindside me. My manager and colleague asking what they can do to support me. Wow, that was a change when I came here. Finding an employer, manager and a team that understand or are actively opening to learning and understanding my strengths and challenging. Supporting me and not masking my quirks, but at the same time, they put up with some of the less desirable traits as well, so I don't have to mask. Having a safe place, either physically or remotely, where I can be me. If I need to let the potty mouth out, I know exactly who I can ring or where I can do it, so that I try and be appropriate in the workplace. For me, again, getting the diagnosis was really important. I have to have answers. I was lucky enough, my last role, to have a workplace mentor during my early discovery stages, and that really, really helped me. Then and now, having a buddy who can recognise signs of me needing support before I get too bad that I have to ask, because I won't ask unless I'm near enough rock bottom. And being given the tools to find out the career that suited my strengths rather than what I'd been doing for the last 25 years. So I want to look at supporting others, because it's all well and good saying, right, this is me, but what about others? So first of all, we are protected by law. Not all neurodivergent workers consider themselves to be disabled, and some might even find this offensive. Everybody has the right to identify or not identify with a term as they see fit. However, under the Equality Act 2010, we will meet the definition of disability. It's not even lightly. If I didn't have my physical disability, I would still fit under. It provides us with rights for adjustments and protection against discrimination, harassment and victimisation. And there are also additional duties on the public sector employers. Government statutory guidance to the Equality Act states that a disability can arise from a wide range of impairments, whether they be developmental, such as autism, autistic spectrum disorder, to dyslexia, dyspraxia, etc. Workers are also protected against discrimination by association, which may arise when a worker is treated less favourably because they have a dependent with a neurodiverse condition. You adapt your processes. How can you open up to people who have daily struggles? First of all, look at your recruitment processes. Having managers aware of subtle changes in the review of candidates would open up for more interviews for neurodiverse people. Training to understand conditions and adjustments for the interview process. Job description. Get rid of that horrible bit of desirable. That's my personal opinion. And essential skills. Essential, yes. But desirable, unless I ticked every column for desirable, I would not apply for that job. Now, if that was the case, I wouldn't be doing the job I'm doing today. Instead, write out a week in the life of, that you'll have certain deadlines you've got to fit and things that you actually will require them to do. Remember, not everybody can read on the desirable and essentials. Some people might skip them. Some people might go, well, I can't tick them all, therefore I'm not applying. Also, have a look at how you do your application processes. Do you expect somebody to upload their CV and then fill in 30, 40 boxes and have to remember a password that's 15 characters long with, you know, so many numbers and uppercase, lowercase? You're closing the door to people by doing that. Saying to people, if you struggle with using our online process, feel free to reach out to X and they can discuss an appropriate way for you to apply. Don't rule out somebody's CV because it's full of spelling mistakes. Don't rule somebody out because they've had 300 jobs. You're going to be missing out potentially on the best people. Speak to them, ask them, get them on the phone, change the way you do it. Good, see you've got these people in. And then onboarding. You know, right, here you are, there's your job, off you go. And all of a sudden they can't cope. They've been overwhelmed. Giving them a list of jobs they have to do. It's not going to work. For me, it helped by having informal catch-ups before my first day. I got to meet the people I was working with directly, the main 2 or 3 people beforehand, and got to know them over coffee. Get to know the employee and find out what support they need and what will help them. Gentle team introductions and team up with a buddy or mentor or that person that when it's all getting too much, they can just go and speak to. Daily plan for the first few weeks and a meet or greet for then more wider introductions, but doing it slowly at the employee's pace. You've then got the horrible PDRs. Let's face it, who likes them? Identifying areas of strengths and utilising their additional skills within the role and the team. Agree check-ins, review procedures in advance, ensure they're followed. Identify the areas employees request some more support in. Never ambush them or put in surprise chats. Also, why does it have to be 5 things that are, this is what you've got to do to achieve this? Why can't you say, right, if you've got a struggle, and what can we as the business do to help you support that? Why couldn't that be one of their objectives? To help them become more comfortable within their struggle. Then there's developments. To set achievable goals within the agreed timeframes. Utilise neurodiverse team members in key projects and always ask how you can support. Retention. It's all well and good getting people in and then developing them, but if you can't keep them, if you haven't got the right culture, they're going to go. So ensure your culture from the bottom up is rewritten, that it's open, supportive and inclusive. Understand your own team, find out how to engage and motivate them. Keeping the environment stable. Now, if you're suddenly going to start changing offices or moving people around, or you've got hot desks, just remember not everybody is going to be able to cope with that. So as a manager, how can you support your reports? Number 1, ask. Ask your colleague to explain the strengths and challenges which help support them, what helps them, what support they would like, what support they will need. And if they don't know, they might turn around to you and say, I'm autistic, but I don't know what challenges. Utilize other people that can help that. And just remember, this is an open and ongoing conversation. Just because they don't know now, something might come up that triggers where they need help, and just ask them to keep coming back to you and saying, right, if you pick something up, come back. You don't need all the answers at once. Recognize when they're needing time away from stimulants to decompress, to refocus, to pull out of a potential meltdown or overload situation. Be cautious of feelings and trigger words that might cause distress, such as you are wrong. Word it may be as, I see this as a different answer. Can I show you how I see it, how I got to that answer? And also I want to understand how you got to your answer, and let's work together. Be mindful of feelings and fears your staff have when they're going into a new role that somebody else has previously done. Don't compare them or tell the new employee how good the old one was. Just because the old one was your friend doesn't mean this new one can't be, and this new person cannot succeed in their role. But if you start unbiasedly putting them down at the beginning, it's not going to help them going on. because you could end up pushing them into a downward spiral. Encourage them to turn the role into their own and be themselves. Allocating work to strengths rather than saying, so-and-so did that last time, so you've got to do that this time. There might be a reason why they struggle with it. Ask them to pick a challenge or two they wish you to support them on developing, and incorporate that into their objectives with clear and achievable targets. Manage them to their strengths. Let them help you. They can help you guide you on your own journey as well, because they will have skills that can support your role. Let's use the positives. It's not about you and it's not about them. Allow them a dedicated safe space, and this should be defined by the person and could be a number of things such as a dark area, quiet area, somewhere they can totally unmask and let out their frustrations. Give clear guidance on what you require, when it's needed, how it's to be determined and completed. Don't give them huge tasks and just say to off you go. Manage yours and theirs expectations on what the result is. And then utilise external places such as DWP, Access to Work or Occupational Health for more detailed support options. Wanted to go on to some questions that have come out from managers and supervisors. So one of my team shows some neurodiverse traits. How can I help them? Ask. Very, very simply, ask, but also do some research. Reach out to others with knowledge or who have similar traits. Be mindful, some people are more than happy to embrace and discuss their traits. Other people aren't. How can we help the business to become neuro-inclusive? Asking managers for training, promote traits. Be mindful of events when you're arranging, such as like training or anything that's out of the norm. Be willing to open and adapt. Ask your colleagues that have been speaking up about being neurodivergent for their real lived experiences and what things have helped them. Don't judge. More information for the business can be found on LinkedIn, and there's various communities, individuals and groups. There's also specialist training in HR businesses such as Do It Solutions or Neuro-Inclusive HR. You've got charities and specialist organisations such as ADHD 360 and autism.org.uk. And finally, ask us, your colleagues, your employees. So I've totally run over as normal. I've never been known for keeping into time. So thank you, everyone, and back to Caris.
Thank you, Cybill, and don't worry, we've got plenty of time left for a few questions. Thank you, that was really excellent. I think you provided so much great insights for managers to take away and for any people if they are neurodivergent or thinking that they might be. So now we're going to do a little Q&A. I'll just field some questions. If you've got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and we'll try and get through as many as we can in the time we've got. Melody put an interesting case into the chat, which I think is just a point of interest, but it is quite interesting, so I'll just share it. There's been an interesting employment appeal tribunal outcome on this. Morgan v Buckinghamshire Council. Morgan was awarded a compensation payment as Buckinghamshire Council were found to have harassed her by stating they found it disappointing that she had chosen to mask her autistic traits in the work, in her work as a social worker. That's very interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Melanie. We'll pop that in the follow-up in case anyone else wants to have a little read.
And there are a lot of cases, and from a business, and it isn't necessarily that the business has done anything wrong. One of them, well, the case was horrible to read itself because the person thought it was appropriate to act in a illegal behaviour. They actually won the court case because the business knew that they had a certain condition and hadn't actively gone out to make reasonable adjustments, even though the employee stated they did not need any because there was nothing wrong with their behaviour, which actually turned out to be illegal. So it's always worth being mindful that if you are aware of somebody, just to make sure from an HR perspective that you have it documented, whether they have requested and what the business has done to request and help and support those people. So it's not always about us shouting out, because none of us know what we need until we need it.
Very true. And really a manager should be there to support their reports in any way. Melanie also mentioned, for anyone interested, the do/it profiler is a neurodiversity screening tool that can help you determine your neurodiverse traits.
Mel, I'm just going to shout out and embarrass her on here. She was actually my mentor in my last place that helped me come out. Not as I say, come out to myself, to understand myself. So big shout out. Cheers, Mel Francis, just to embarrass you. Payback sweet.
Very helpful information there. Thank you, Melanie. Yeah, so if anyone, it's not a formal diagnosis, she says it's just for personal use. We've had another question, but as a mum of 2 children with additional needs, this has been very inspiring. Thank you. Got some great feedback. Oh, this is a good one. How do you suggest newly diagnosed young people approach the move from school to working life?
That's a really good one, because I know personally it was easy in the fact that I finally left school, because I was bullied at school, bullied badly, and going into the workplace meant that I was going around adults. I think, first of all, can you help them to understand their strengths and their struggles? Is there a facility for somewhere, say where a parent works or somewhere they're safe to go and do a bit of work experience, just so they can see how workplaces are? There's nothing worse than being blindsided, and blindsided can be anything. It's just something that's different, that's just suddenly put in front of you. I would also strongly recommend that you speak to some local charities. I know that's, or not even charities, so our health authority actually have young persons groups where young people can get together and get additional support, and young people that are in that age gap, bracket from age sort of 16 to 25, where they are transitioning from going to school and being told what to do to all of a sudden going to work, and although being told what to do, they've got to manage their own time. That the stimulants are so different. It's such a different world. I don't know whether your local partnership, NHS partnership, would have something. I'd certainly say look at what sort of helps out there, because I can't offer. I'd love to say here's the answer, but everyone, as I said before, is individual. But maybe if you could have them in your workplace for a bit, or you had a family friend or a member of the family in the field that they wanted to go in, that they could do some work experience, and just make sure that everybody that they're going to be interacting with is fully aware of their conditions, so that they can make it as happy as possible.
Really good advice. And what I always find really interesting is that your advice for people who are neurodivergent would actually be very useful for just everyone. Like having work placements for young people entering the workplace is so valuable, so that they understand the expectations and the environment. So I think it's just good common sense, so much of it, in some ways. We've had a question as well from Stephanie. When taking a lot of over the phone instructions, do you have a good way to keep track of instructions rather than on post-it notes? If it's out of sight, it doesn't exist. And I'm quite curious to learn this as well. Do you have any?
Yeah, well, if you, I think you're sitting behind me and see my desk that's covered in post-it notes everywhere. Oh, and then the stickiness goes and you lose it, and you spend the next 10 hours finding it, or you've forgotten about it. I use a couple of different tools. I live on my Outlook, so everything is in there. So if I've got a task to do, say I'm going to put 3 hours aside to do an objective, I block that out in my calendar, so that, because otherwise I'll just be helping everybody else all the time or getting distracted. But I then type the information in there. You've got post-it notes that you can actually use on your computer screen, so the virtual post-it notes. You could also look at some other online organisers or diaries. And I think when it comes down to organisation, my biggest thing, it has to be my Outlook calendar and diary. And I just use that so that as soon as I open up the task, all the notes to do with that, whether I'm looking at a bit of legislation or court case, something like that, it's all there. And I like everything on the computer. I've still got 10 notepads, by the way. I do have something called a Remarkable, which I got through DWP Access to Work, which is a tablet notebook. And that means that everything that can be kept on that, or I can transfer it to a computer. So I write all my notes down instead of having to flick through 10 different notepads. It's all there, and then I just file it in a File Explorer folder on my desktop.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Thank you, Cybill. I hope that helps. Okay, and last question before we wrap up from Edwina, and don't worry, it isn't a silly question, but Edwina is asking, basically, if your report, an employee has come to you and isn't sure what they need and is autistic, how, as an employer, can you support or help them? Obviously, she says to start with some research to get some ideas, but as it isn't a one-size-fits-all, where do you go from there?
Totally. So for me personally, I'd be using, and I have done this, I've used my strengths and struggles lists. So it's a bit of like a for and against list. So list all the strengths and list all the struggles and the challenges. And then I'd be having a look at which ones need help. So if somebody says they really struggle with the noise, they're in the office all the time and they're constantly getting distracted by the noise, you could then go, right, okay, so we know what the struggle is, so let's have a look at what's out there to help. So you could say, right, okay, we've got noise cancelling headphones, or there's somewhere else quieter that you can go and sit. We could look at moving you to a different position in the office. Or if it's more to do with actually doing a job, have a look at what's out there to help them. You know, DWP give all sorts of help. Could it be coaching? Do they get, you know, they struggle to get started, they struggle to get motivated? Look at some sort of coaching sessions that are available. So I'd certainly say, as you say, one size does not fit all. Have a look at the strengths and challenges and which ones would be most appropriately helpful in to make the workplace better to start off with. So, you know, is it they're struggling reading something? You know, you can get this great thing for text, because I read too fast. I can read a whole book on my Kindle in like an hour and a half, and it's meant to last 5 hours. There is an application that you can use just through Google, and you put in the text and it highlights the first 3 letters as bold, and it helps you read and it helps you slow down. So have a look at those things, have a look at the struggles. Then potentially could you look at access to work to get the help. You could look at your occupational health provider, might have some specialized training people. Have a look on, you know, on social media like LinkedIn to what people have said, but I'd certainly say start with your strengths and your challenges and take it step by step, baby steps, and it doesn't have to be perfect.
Advice, thank you. That was a really good one to finish on. So I'm just going to wrap up this webinar with a few things that might help anyone out who's on the call. So this is the 3rd in our series on payroll careers, as I mentioned at the start. The second ones we've already done, and you can view them on our Knowledge Centre, which is in the main menu of our website. So we did one on how to progress, which has fantastic insights onto kind of how to take your career to the next level. It focuses on a kind of mid-career to senior career progression, but does apply to all levels really, including how to kind of be considered for the next promotion, get new opportunities and different career routes you can follow as a payroll professional. And the second is a panel webinar on anything but ordinary, highlighting the different careers you can have in payroll. And we dig into the career paths of some of our own senior members of the team working at MorePay, which are really fascinating, as well as a guest appearance from Vicky Graham from the CIPP. So that's also, if I may say so, a very good webinar, quite interesting if you're interested in this topic. So just pop on the website and they're free and available to watch at your own leisure. This is what the Knowledge Centre looks like. If you do want any more updates on payroll legislation, case law, everything to do with HR as well, we've got so many articles, guides, you name it, past webinars. So it's a really good resource if you just want some free, up-to-date information that's been checked by experts. And if you are considering getting any payroll or HR support for your business, again, here are just a few little reviews, but if you do want any support, just let me know in the comments and we can talk through any payroll or HR questions or solutions that you might be interested in. And yeah, that's it for today. Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much, Cybill, for doing such an amazing webinar.
Thank you for the invite.
You're so welcome. Yeah, and I'll close the webinar now. Thanks all.